Hey, hi. So, hope you're well. This is I Swear to Drunk I'm Not God. This is episode 18. And we haven't talked in a while. We haven't talked since the good old Wineville chicken coop murders. Did you all like that one? You probably didn't. And that's okay, because it sucked. And it sucked, actually. It really sucked researching it, too. This one's worse. Oh, but first, Kirrah's back.
Yay.
Whoop, whoop. Whoop,
Yay.
whoop. Whoop, whoop.
Yay.
Pull over that ass too fat. Whoop, whoop. Pull over that ass too fat.
Oh,
whoop,
that
whoop.
turned into something else.
Okay. And so today we're episode 18 and we are talking about the killing of James Bulger. I didn't tell Kirrah much about this and
anything.
I haven't told her anything. And I like doing that a little bit because it, it adds to the mystique when you're listening to it for the first time and you're like, oh, okay. Like your reactions are like natural and visceral. And I prefer it that way.
It also means I don't have to do research.
Facts. Well, yeah, you wouldn't have to do research anyway. But if you, even if you wanted to watch a documentary, like I found one, I could have sent it to you and I was like, nah, I like her being confused.
Nah.
So we're going to talk about the killing of James Bulger. Trigger warning. Remember when I said during the second episode of the Wineville chicken coop murders, I was like, oh yeah, this will be the last child murder.
I don't even know why you would make that promise.
I don't know why I made that promise because sometimes I told you all, sometimes when you're on that track, it's easier to stay on that track because the books that you read lead to other situations. This was actually something I ran into on Instagram. I'm not supposed to be on Instagram, but I ran into it on Instagram and I knew.
Would have known that had you not said anything.
I deactivated, but I am. My Swear to Drunk is
still saying.
Yeah, but my Swear to Drunk is still up. It is what it is. Every now and again, I want to look at something funny, but because my algorithm is very serial killer based on my Swear to Drunk podcast, that I still get crime stuff a lot. So I just was scrolling. And I was like, ooh, what is that? And then I found it and I researched the shit out of it. And then I was like, bet this is what this episode's going to be about. So the poison. Me and Kirrah aren't necessarily drinking right now because we got shit to do.
We aren't at all. This is water.
We're not drinking. We're drinking water. But I did, because this case is in the UK, we are hopping the pond. We're jumping the old Atlantic.
Going for a little bit of scotch. Harry Potter.
Okay. We're gonna do the Vesper. The Vesper low-key really wanted to make this, probably will when we go to Target, which we need to do.
Target?
Yeah. It is 2 ounces of gin, a 1/3 ounce of Lillet Blanc. And if you don't know what that is, go find it. It's delicious. Used to buy it a lot. It's very sweet. You only need a 1/3 ounce of it because it's sweet. You need a 2/3 ounce of vodka. So it's gin and it's vodka.
Ooh, it's a headache.
Straight up. Well, I don't know.
Gin and vodka mix? No.
I don't know.
While you may stay skinny throughout, you may come out with a little bit of a
it's low calorie for sure. Now, you put that in a cocktail shaker with some ice. You shake that shit up and then put it in a chill glass and then you drink it and boom, you got a Vesper. You can also garnish it with a lemon if wasting fruit is your bag. I don't do that. I don't garnish, okay?
No, she just keeps her limes in the refrigerator 4 months.
I do. Like I wait and if we're being honest, limes and lemons are typically the only fruit that I have in the fridge, and
they're
those are
literally petrified by the time you get them.
They're like little green raisins.
They're like little green mummies.
It's like, yeah, I should probably throw these away. But then sometimes because I'm ghetto, if one side of the lime is like, okay, then I'll just slice off the shitty part and like still use the juice. Because as some of you may know, I'm a chronic gin and tonic demonic body, smell like vomit.
Oh, there we go again.
Yeah, I have like musical Tourette's. And if you don't know what that's from Purple Pills by D12. Find it on Apple Music. No, I'm just joking. So anyway, fuck that. Let's be serious for a minute. Because this is a shitty topic. So trigger warning is this is another child murder. But here is the silver lining. There is only one death. We're only talking about James Bulger.
Oh, well, thank God for that.
Yeah. So there isn't a series of child murders. And I'm not going to tell you anything more than that, because there is a difference between these three and the last three, which was Carl Panzram, Albert Fish, and the Wineville chicken coop murders. And now the Bulger murder is a little different. So let's dive in. I would say sip, but I'm going to drink some water.
Yay, hydration.
Because I'm on an 1.5 hour ride and my mouth gets real dry these days. Thanks, edibles. Excuse me. I should not have hocked a loogie in this mic, but I did.
It won't be the first time.
Nope.
I'm sure of it.
No. Oh my God. And I went back to some old episodes before I had my sinus surgery. And I was like, damn.
You look, yo, so welcome to my show.
No, what I fucking couldn't stop doing, because this room makes me sick. What I couldn't stop doing was not sneezing, but like I couldn't stop having to clear my throat. But it was like not like that. It was more like nasal clear my throat. So because I had severe postnasal drip. And but I was listening to it and I was like, damn, like the first 10 episodes I sound like I was suffering. Like I just sound sick. Like I sound like I should have had that surgery years ago.
Better late than never.
Mm-hmm. And even though like you may still hear some congestion, that's primarily because I'm allergic to dust. So everywhere I go, I have an allergic reaction.
Everywhere I go, I sneeze. And everywhere I sneeze, I go.
What? The fuck? And we're not
it's
even
like
drunk.
a SpongeBob where he's like, I broke my legs and my arm.
Oh my God, speaking of SpongeBob, why did I run into a video of him singing that ICU song in the Krusty Krab? And when I say whoever, because I guess there's like a voice filter that sounds like SpongeBob, and this guy was like singing ICU, and it was like perfection compared to the cartoon. It was just such a great.
I really love how long SpongeBob is stuck around.
Seriously,
like it's such a good show.
It's such a great show. And personally, like I think that it is one of those shows that always kind of toed the line for the LGBTQ community and was doing it in secret for years. But some of us who attract gay men in volume, like my life is like the Costco of gay men. Since I was a child, not even like just adulthood, I've always had gay friends. Your bitch knew early on. I'm like, they're giving gay couple. And then even Squidward gives like a old, angry gay. You know.
It's almost like I want to say Stanley Tucci, but
but except
if Stanley Tucci were gay,
if he was gay, him and what was that? Devil Wears Prada. Was he in Devil Wears Prada?
That's Stanley Tucci.
Yeah, I'm saying his character.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes. That.
So, but anyway,
Any hoozle.
SpongeBob. Anyway, so meanwhile, the killing of James Bulger. Let's get into it.
Get into some real gangster shit.
Yeah. Now it's. I'm gonna say too. It's gonna be hard to make this funny.
So that's good.
It's going to be hard to make this funny. So
that's because murder is real.
Murder is not funny.
It is not a joke. It is not a game unless you're me and I take nothing seriously.
What? And also, stop murdering people.
Well,
can we start?
It depends on what they did.
Well, it's facts. Like, stop senselessly murdering people. Like, if you murder a motherfucker because he did something to your child, your wife, you.
Or if like
your shit, your house, your
drove
dog,
a Target cart into your car.
I
think that's deserving of murder.
For murder. That is
or a Costco cart, because Costco carts are fucking heavy.
Facts,
okay?
but I also feel like that's grounds for an ass whooping. I'm losing my mind.
Murder.
All right. Wait, what? No, those are not the same.
Is there a difference? If you beat his ass correctly,
there is definitely a difference. If you beat his ass correctly,
Maya Angelou. I'm sure she said that at some point.
I know why the cage bird sing. That was
To Kill a Mockingbird.
That was what? Little did you know, she had a quote from To Kill a Mockingbird in her poem, but in it, she was just basically saying that like you can beat a person to an extent and murder them, and it's still considered an ass whooping.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, so that was just like those were the pages that we lost of
the lost files.
The lost files
of the Lou.
Exactly. I feel like no, not the lost files of the Lou. It's not true. Can we just say that none of that was true? I just want to make sure that
you can't prove it.
If the files are lost, you really don't know.
Prove it. We've been reading the Bible for forever.
What? we don't know what we're talking about. All right. Okay, let's do this. Let's ride. Because we're on a fuck her. Okay, so we went to go see Beyonce. We went 2 days in a row. A friend and coworker of mine gave me his Sunday tickets. He gave me 3 of them. So me and Kirrah saw it twice, and then we ended up taking my mom, and it was such a beautiful thing. She's so fucking pretty that it's almost infuriating looking at her on the screen. I was looking at some of my videos because I really didn't take any pictures. I took a lot of videos, and I was looking at the videos, and I was like, this bodysuit. Like, I want all of these bodysuits. Her leotards are just on point, and her costumes were on point.
Because the stylist is black.
The stylist killed it, and it was nice to go both days too, because then we got the chance to like goo goo gaga over like new outfits on the second day. So that was nice. We actually had really good seats. The first day we were on the floor. The second day we were in section 2, which was actually really closer to the stage than it was when we were on the floor. And plus, you know, we had, of course, the convenience of like being cascaded in stadium seating. So it was wonderful. She's such a wonderful entertainer. So big ups to Beyonce and the Renaissance album and the Renaissance people. She had Les Twins there, who I've been admiring for years. I'm happy that they are progressing in the way they're progressing. They're beautiful dancers. Her daughter came out the second day, Blue, which we didn't have her that first day. She came out the second day. Jay-Z was there. One of my homeboys had told me that apparently he was at an art gallery on 47th. So I'm assuming he was either donating or buying art.
And apparently that's why the show started late on Sunday, because we were waiting for Hove and Blue.
Oh, got it. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense now. But when she came out, you know, it was so exciting to see her because she is literally them split in half. Yes. Like it's literally Jay-Z and Beyonce's baby. And what else? Oh, so yeah, I had a good time. I had to take like 72 hours to recoup. I've learned I'm one of those people who socially need a minute to like recharge my battery. So
I thought everyone was like that.
I don't think so. I think it's extroverted introverts, because sometimes like, you know, you're a hybrid and you can balance the two. You can be like, oh, I can be outside, but then you're outside for 2. Because so with introverts, they have to build up the battery to go outside. For extroverts, the battery is already there. They just have to refill it after the fact. So
what if you are neither? What if you are C?
All of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah. So, I mean, I spent like, plus, you know, it was just like a bunch of hormones and shit too that would rattle in my cage. So I took 72 hours to get my shit together, and I'm happy I did, because here we are. I'm ready.
I'm not. I'm fucking starving.
Okay. Let's get this going so Kirrah can eat. All right. Episode 18, the killing of James Bulger. On Friday, February 12th, 1993, Denise Bulger, 25, and her son James went to the new Strand Shopping Center. She had made a stop at A.R. Tim's Butchers, which was obviously a butcher shop, when at around 3:40, Denise let her son's hand go. And shortly after, she noticed that James was gone. Denise was apparently very protective of her son, and she had been married for 3 years to Ralph Bulger, and their first pregnancy was a stillbirth. So Denise was one of 13 children herself. So she came from a pretty big family. She was also very happy and excited about being a mother. But when she had that first pregnancy go bad, she was so grateful to have another pregnancy, which was James. That day, Denise arrived at her mother's when Nicola, her brother's partner, asked Denise if she wanted to go to TJ Hughes, which was a department store, with her to make a return. And on that trip to the mall was Denise, James, Nicola, and Vanessa. John was Denise's brother. Vanessa was John's 3-year-old. So now the kids, they were all acting a fool the whole time they were out over at the mall. They had been wrangling the 2 children the entire time they were at the mall. Kids, obviously, when you give them a wide open space, they're going to run the fuck around. That's just the way they roll. So James was all over the place that day. He even got a spanking that day. She popped his legs a couple of times. She was like, motherfucker, you getting on my nerves.
Sit your ass down.
I'd also like to, let me preface this too. Motherfuckers from Liverpool are ghetto. Because every aspect of reading the book. Oh, by the way, I read. I did read a book. Sorry, I did read a book. It was called The Sleep of Reason by David James Smith, and reading about people in England, especially poorer parts of England, remind me very much so of living on the South Side. It's very similar. So. Anyway, so the kids were playing around in the mall. He ended up getting spanking. So they arrived at A.R. Tim's, and Denise and Nicola went in. When Denise went to retrieve her money to pay for what she was buying, Nicola noticed James was playing at the entrance with a lit cigarette butt, which is like, who the fuck? Motherfucker, I forget it's 1993, and I forget that people used to smoke in the fucking mall. Because I'm like, why is there lit cigarette butts in the mall? So
why are they playing with them?
So James's ass, this is how he got his legs popped.
Airplane, what the fuck kind of kids are these?
It's like, but kids find anything to play with. They're like, ooh, light. It's like,
I can tell you what, I've never played with the lit cigarette butt.
Yeah, no. Well, I used to pick them up and smoke them.
That explains.
Yeah, how I didn't end up with herpes is way beyond me. Once Denise was done, Nicola was next. So Denise came back. She went out to find James, and then when she came back into the store, she was like, "Where's James?" And then Nicola was like, "He's only just outside." And she was like, "I can't find him outside." So James Patrick Bulger was born March 16th, 1990 in Kirkby, Merseyside, England. He was 2 years old and 11 months, so he was almost 3 when he went missing. He had fair skin, light brown and blonde hair with blue eyes and a mouth full of baby teeth. He was cuter than cuteness.
He sounds like the little boy from Pet Sematary.
Literally looked like him. He had a small tint of brown in his right eye, which kind of almost made me cry because I have a small tint of brown in my right eye. And it's not in the pupil, though. It's actually the white, which I'm like...
I have that, too.
What the... Well, you know,
I don't like it.
I don't like it either, but they said that black people, it's common in African Americans because it's like a melanin thing, which I was like, why does melanin attack us the way it do?
I don't know, but it makes me feel like I'm dying soon every time I look at it.
That's not what it means.
It feels like it.
But you know what it makes me think of? Crackheads. Because I feel
That's why I feel like I'm dying soon.
Okay. So...
the fuck?
So but the way they describe this, I'm assuming that he had blue eyes, but he had a brown tint in his pupil. Because you know how some white kids, or some kids in general, they have like one blue eye, one slightly brown eye.
I thought only Huskies had that problem.
No. That's a human thing too. So he was wearing a blue waterproof coat with a hood.
Oh.
Underneath, he wore a tracksuit, a white t-shirt with blue stripes on the back and green stripes on the front with the word naughty. Not naughty, but Noddy, which I'm like, is that like the UK version of naughty? Because you remember back in the day we used to wear Juicy Couture?
Yeah.
Like, did the back of his shirt say naughty? Because that's
a brand?
What is with people from England putting E at the end of everything? Like... If they want, like, let's say, like naughty is obviously a word that ends in D. You see what I mean? Like they put, like if I said I wanted a pop, like British people would change that and they'd be like, oh, go get me a poppy. It's like, why couldn't you just call it a pop?
I have never actually heard a British person say
they
that.
don't say. I'm giving you example of that because I'm just saying they put a Y at the end of everything. Like everything turns into like a cute kid word, and I'm like, what the fuck is that about? Like, why do they do that? Like, I'm going to go get me a drinky. It's like, no, why? Why couldn't it just be drink? Why did you add an extra syllable that we didn't need?
The Brits.
Yeah. So he also had on a pair of little white Pumas and a blue and a blue and yellow cat scarf. So the salesperson, yeah, it had a cat on it.
That's so cute.
So the salesperson told Denise to notify security. James was the first reported child missing that day. Missing children were actually very common, and usually the missing child would show up in about 15 to 20 minutes. So the security had made an announcement, which we all know that they do all the time over the intercom, while Denise went out to go search. And after 30 minutes, it was time to contact Marsh Lane police, because 30 minutes was too fucking long. The Strand had 20 cameras. 16 were actually recording, but the tape would only capture stills every 2 to 3 seconds. Remember, this is 1993. So tapes didn't necessarily run 24 frame per second film. It basically took pictures every 2 to 3 seconds and kind of put them together. So when you look at the film, it kind of looks like stop motion animation. Now, there was actually additional mall security as well. They had mall cops. The Strand had 114 shops. There were 3 big department stores, which was Mark and Spencer, TJ Hughes, and Woolworths. R.I.P. Woolworths.
So cute. What are these places?
I know. Well, you wouldn't remember Woolworths, but we used to have those. It was kind of like Goldblatt's.
Oh,
the mall was, or Montgomery Ward, or, back when Sears existed. The mall was getting about 120,000 visitors a week. And this was a Friday. Saturdays were typically their busiest days.
Blessing.
So this was the second version of the Strand. The Strand's new layout was actually supposed to mimic the American Mall. So it was refurbished in the late 1980s. Needless to say, Denise was freaking the fuck out. She could not understand how it happened so quickly. She was like, I was only in the shop for a few seconds. I turned around and he gone. Now, originally there was news of another missing child at the same time. It was a 4-year-old, and it was reported that a man with a white coat had tried to get the child into his car. Local news bulletins have raised suspicion about a woman with a ponytail about a man with a ponytail who was at the Strand earlier. And the search for the man was underway. But when the ponytail man showed up, was like, what the fuck are y'all looking for me for? He was eliminated as a suspect because he was like, nope, I ain't got shit to do with this. Like, leave me the fuck alone.
Like, leave me, my ponytail, and my white
Period.
coat
Let
alone.
me go tiptoe through the tulips with my ponytail. Now, useless lead after useless lead, they all had to follow up on him, and there was still no James. They contacted the trains, the taxis, the bus services. Officers began searching on foot and by car looking for James. All around the center, the walkways, the canal. There was a canal, like a nice little cute river area right along the mall. They searched the shops. Everywhere, but no go. So Denise figured that if James had just wandered off and got lost because, he was a child, if he had found the exit, he probably would have just kept walking. Like, he wouldn't have stopped walking. I mean, I hate to make this comparison, but kids are like dogs in that way. You kind of have to train them. And this is why some people always have their kids in a stroller or put the motherfuckers on a leash, because at the end of the day, kids will just walk. They see something shiny, they see something that jumps, they see something that moves. Because they're so overly stimulated, they will keep walking. They'll go in the direction of anything.
Yeah, there was a little girl walking down my block yesterday. Not yesterday, last week. This woman was walking down the block with her, and she's like, do y'all know who she belongs to? She was just out on the porch by herself or something like that. She was like out in front of the house by herself, just wandering around the neighborhood. And I'm like, how did this child just walk out the front door?
Yeah, and kids sometimes just do. It's like,
but it's also like,
that's why you have child protective locks. That's
like, pay attention to your child.
Yeah, now that's facts. I mean, that's human error at that point. So, meanwhile, Ralph, her husband, had no idea what was happening because it's 1993. She ain't got no cell phone. She ain't got no way to reach him. You know, Ralph was kind of like doing like under the table work or whatever, because they were in their mid-20s. They were super young. He was doing like under the table work, and he was like helping his, you know, his brother and, you know, that type of shit. So he had no idea what the fuck was going on. So Denise was escorted to the police station. After 3 hours, Jim Fitzsimmons of the Criminal Investigation Department was assigned to the case. Jim started to organize an all hands on deck effort to find James. And when Ralph finally arrived at the station, he was advised to take them home to conduct a search as well. He was like, look, per usual, the alleged sightings, they started work rolling in. Motherfuckers were like, I saw the kid, I saw the kid, I saw the kid. And each sighting had to be logged and had to be assessed. At this time, they didn't really know if this was criminal or not. They were like, I mean, he's a kid. He could have just wandered off. But all the leads had to be followed up on regardless. So there was one sighting that suggested that James had been crossing a bridge over the canal and James was spotted crying below. So Jim requested a marine search of the water the following morning because he was like, ooh, shit, if this kid wandered off in some water, it's likely that he fell into the canal and drowned.
Yikes.
He thought that they would likely find a body after searching. So another sighting was from an older woman who claimed that she had spotted James with two slightly older boys, and the boy looked like he had bumped his head. Denise and Ralph accompanied the police on the Strand on a Strand walkthrough. So they went through the mall, and she had to show exactly where they went and when and where from James disappeared. And it had been 9 fucking hours at this point. With some hesitation, Denise and Ralph finally decided it was best, with the police's insistence, to go home because the police was like, there's really nothing else you can do here. We're going to stay overnight, but you all should go home and get some rest. So after exhausting most of the leads and searching some 73 of the 114 stores, it was suggested that the police check the security footage, which to me was like, damn, y'all ain't thinking about doing that first? The Operational Support Division officer posted at the Strand called in to Marsh Lane PD for Jim and told him, quote, I think we've got him. He's on video leaving the Strand. Do you want to come by and have a look? Of course, he's like, fuck yeah. In the video, there were 2 boys, maybe 13 or 14, but the video was not good. So they contacted the photo unit to do an image enhancing of the image. At this point, it's 3 fucking a.m. in the morning. Now, that morning, that Saturday, they got enhanced images of the video, but couldn't tell the ages of the 2 boys that were with James. It had only taken 1 minute and 30 seconds from the abduction to the mall entrance, which when I watched the documentary, the mall entrance was actually on the opposite side of the mall. And let's say the butcher is at the east end of the mall, right? The kids took him to the west end of the entrance, and they could not figure out how the fuck they got this kid out the mall in 1 minute and 30 seconds. They were like, were they running? They weren't even running. So meanwhile, there was no body in the canal. After they searched, they were like, no body. Now what? Was there any chance that James was still alive? And so that evening, the officer took the image to the older lady who had been walking her dogs, who originally made a statement. She was like, she remembered that the boys didn't look that much older than 11. And so she noticed that they had local accents. She said she saw him less than an hour after he was abducted, which was at 4:15. This was not conclusive, but worth following up on. Albert Kirby, he was the detective superintendent in charge of the Serious Crime Squad, would arrive the following day, which was a Sunday. He was briefed, and the search continued for the 2 boys in the photo. That same day, a group of kids would find what looked like a doll on the tracks. First, they saw a bundle wrapped in a coat, and then they saw legs. So they were fucking terrified, and they ran. They ran to the police station, which was right next to the tracks. They reported a baby cut in half on the tracks.
Yikes.
At 3:13 p.m., the CID was contacted and the British Rail was told to close the line. The report of the baby came in, but they didn't want to tell Denise or the family until they were sure. But when Jeff McDonald, who was the deputy investigator, Jim, and Alex Kirby, who was the senior investigator, arrived on the scene, it was obviously James. So they could tell this because his clothing, which was all too familiar at this point. Jeff McDonald volunteered for the terrible task of telling Denise and Ralph that James had been found. Quote, "Yes, I'm sorry. We found James." Denise fucking screamed. Ralph was so distraught that he punched the nearby screen. And Alex Kirby, he's at the scene. He pulled out his notepad. He was dropping down the specs of the scene, and he noted the position of the lower half of the body between the track and the embankment on the side nearest the police station, and the position of the upper half, which was 7 sleepers. Sleepers are sleeper cars, further down towards Edge Hill between the same tracks. It appeared that the body had been lying at a right angle across the track nearest the police station. The upper half inside the track, it appeared to have been covered in bricks and had probably been dislodged when a train had severed the body at the waist, dragging the lower half, which was naked, some 15 feet, 7 sleepers down the line. The clothing, which had been removed and was scattered around the upper half of the body. The gray tracksuit bottoms, slightly stained with blood and paint, a pair of white training shoes with the left shoelace undone and the right shoelace still tied, and a pair of white socks with blue stripes and light blood staining. A pair of underpants, heavily stained with blood, was found, placed under one of the bricks. There was a heavy strip of steel lying against the bricks. It was a fish plate, which is some 2 feet long and is used to attach railway tracks to sleepers. It weighed over 10 kilograms, which is 22 pounds, and was stained with blood. The white scarf, also bloodstained, was lying on the side furthest from the police station between the tracks and the embankment. One bauble had been separated from the scarf, and this was found in the middle of the other track, back towards the bridge. 3 Tandy Evergreen AA size 1.5 volt batteries were scattered near the scarf, 2 of them blood stained, and the 4th was still in the cellophane packet, which was also lying there. The sleepers and the ballast around the scarf was bloodstained, and there was blood spattering on the neighboring wall of the old station platform. A trail of blood led across the tracks to the upper half of the body. There were 2 bricks stained with blood near the scarf and others around the body. There was an S-shaped pandrel securing clip with blood staining and some blonde hairs adhering to it. The clip would normally be used with the fish plate in the construction of the track. British Rail kept emergency supplies of fish plates and clips at intervals along its railways. A tin of Humbrol azure blue paint was found on the track on the other side of the bridge, and there was stains of blue paint on the area by the tin. A box of Quality Street was found further down the line, together with some sweets. The body had sustained multiple head injuries, and there was a great deal of blood, and blue paint had stained the left side of James's face, ear, and neck, and his anorak. His anorak is his coat. Ralph's brother, Ray, would later identify the body as that of James Bulger. When the people that discovered the body were interviewed, they were so enamored with the idea of being on camera that they couldn't get the story straight or take it seriously enough for the news crew to actually use any of the footage. The interview was 8 minutes, but they could only use a couple of lines for the broadcast. So the 2 brothers that found the body, their names were Otzi and Pitts, would later be eliminated as suspects as they were not near the shopping center at the time of the abduction. So the reporter, now I'm going to butcher this because these motherfuckers speak with a very, very, very deep accent. And I don't know if it's I think it's Welsh. So it's very almost Cockney. It's a lot.
Cockney.
Yeah. So hold on. So reporter, what did the body look like? Steve, terrible. We couldn't see the face. Pitts, wrapped up in a little, a coat? Reporter, okay, start again. Tell me, what the body was like when you found it, wrapped up in a coat with all the house bricks all around it and bars on it, and all the organs hanging out from the waist.
Jesus.
Like just there, not pouring out, just all in a big like hill. And then he turned around, no? And then he went, it's a cat. It's a cat wrapped up. Then we seen its legs. No, we said no. It was you well, I said, it's a dead cat. And you went, no, it's sausages.
Is this really how this conversation went?
Tell me, sensibly, what did you think it was when you first saw it? A baby. I did, honestly. Didn't I say? Socks and shoes. Socks, shoes. Yeah. Because I said it's a baby. Because I seen the legs. Then you see doll's legs. And they all ran. And I said, no, it's not. And I walked back over and it had no pants on or nothing. And all dirt around its feet. So then I just went, it's a baby.
So is this like the Christian Bale accent? Because that's how I'm kind of picturing it.
Yeah, it's worse though. It's like, yeah, it's worse. So McDonald, because even when I was watching the documentary, I couldn't fucking understand anything that they were saying.
Yeah, so it's a baby, see?
Yeah.
And then I told him that I was gonna go down to the pub with me and your mom. It's like,
that's literally
what
it's like.
To do what? With
that's
who?
literally what it's like. And I can't do that accent, so you're not getting any of that this episode.
You just got it.
But
that's what it sounds
it's
like.
Intense.
It's like Christian Bale drunk.
Yep, but worse. So McDonald thought it was best to withhold the details of the body. The only official story was that the child was severed by a train. The autopsy had shown that James suffered multiple head injuries, multiple fractures to the skull caused by a heavy object. James had 42 injuries and 30 separate blows. He had scratches, abrasions, and lacerations. He had a bruise on the right cheek that suggested a blow from a shoe. His lower lip was partly pulled away from his jaw, likely due to a kick or a blow. He had bruises and cuts on his shoulders, chest, arms, and legs, and there was some hemorrhaging in the pelvis near the rectum, even though there was no signs of a sexual assault. For some reason, the foreskin of his penis was partly pulled back, and he had a linear abrasion on his right buttocks, which could have occurred from his body being dragged. Poor James was already dead before he was severed by the train, but they picked up samples next. It was the blood, the hair, the nails, and then they photographed the body. Now, who could have possibly have done this? So Kirby, McDonald, and Fitzsimmons examined a new tape, which was recorded by the AMEC building, which ran 24 hours a day. And lo and behold, there was an image of two boys swinging a small child between them as they walked. The quality of tape was crap. Again, 1993. But they knew it was the same three boys from the mall tape. The boys were walking along a low wall, so it was possible to gather the height of the boys relative to the wall. So Kirby stood by the wall and he was like, Christ, these boys are small. They knew these boys were much smaller than they thought. So there were a lot of local and international attention at this point, so the pressure was on. They reran the footage over and over, but nothing came up on the boys' identity. They were getting over 200 calls an hour. And that Wednesday, a call came through from a woman that said her mother's friend had a son named John Venables, and he ditched school Friday with a boy named Robert Thompson. And when he got home, he had blue paint on his jacket. She noticed the lighter jacket on the boy and the friend's son. She didn't want to be involved beyond that. Well, they didn't really give a fuck, and they went out to her home anyway to get a statement. She had given the school name, which was Bedford Road School. That's what she told them. And from there, the superintendent confirmed that the boys were actually only 10 years old. John Venables had two addresses, one for his mother and one for his father. Robert Thompson didn't have a record, but his older brother did, and they worked on the warrant. So these two boys were likely the suspects. On Thursday, the OSD, the officer on special duty, arrived to search the house, and they wanted to get their hands on Robert's clothes. So they collected a pair of shoes, a pair of trainers, some black trousers, a white shirt, a gray jumper, and Bobby's black jacket. There was another bag of shoes upstairs with Bobby's brogues inside. The bag was forgotten in the rush, and someone had to go back to get it later. And when the brogues were examined, it appeared, even to the naked eye, that they were splattered with blood. They weren't sure what home to find John at, though. So they went to they were like, we don't know. He could be at his mom, he could be at his dad's. But when they arrived at Neil Venables' Masonette, John was with his mother, Susan. And one unit stayed at Neil's to search while the others went to Susan's. And when they arrived at Susan, she said, quote, "I knew you'd be here," she said. "I told you," she said, "I told him you'd want to see him for sagging school on Friday." Sagging means cutting. He said, "See whom?" This is what Mark Dale inquired. She said, "Our John." John Venables came down the stairs then, and they all went into the living room, and Susan turned to John. There you are, sagging. I told you they'd be here." She turned back to Mark Dale. "He came home on Friday, coat full of paint." And then he looked back to John. "Paint, sagging. I told you they'd be here." So what Susan's actually referring to is Friday night, the day of the kidnapping. John was caught. John's ass was caught in a video store. Excuse me, shit.
Jesus Christ.
John was caught in a video store down the street from his house. She scolded him for skipping school and dragged him out of the shop. She had been looking for him and even alerted the police of his disappearance and told them that he had run out with Bobby Thompson. So when she got John, she got Bobby too. And Bobby ran off crying because she hit his ass too with a belt. So where have you been? County Road. All afternoon? Yes. When Susan got to John at the police station, when Susan got John to the police station, she could see in the light that he was very dirty and that there was something on his sleeve. "What's that?" He was like, "Paint. Robert threw it at me." Where is it from?" "He stole it from a shop on County Road." Susan saw the paint on his hands and noticed how dirty they were. Usually, he was quite clean coming from home. She turned to the PC Osborne, who was the police officer, and she was like, "Look at the state of him." So PC Osborne noticed that even with crying, there was no tears. He was faking. And when Susan noticed the paint, she was even more upset. So John kept apologizing, and she could hear him crying for over half an hour. And when he went to bed, he was still crying. So when Bobby arrived to the home and told his mother, Ann, that he had been spanked by Mrs. Venables, Ann was fucking furious. She thought that the cut that that Bobby had on his face was from Susan. So he was like, "John Venables' mom ragged me at the video store."
Why do you make him sound like Keanu Reeves?
So Joanne from the video store told Ann that he had the cut on him before he was even dragged out of the shop. She was like, "That woman ain't put that cut on him." So two girls claimed that they saw Susan attack Robert. So Ann decided to file a report against Susan Venables. And the police didn't think that his face warranted an assault charge. He was like, "His face is fucking dirty. So go clean your face and then we'll assess the damage." So he went to the bathroom, went to go clean his face. She saw the little cut. So they were like, "We're not filing an assault charge for this." And so Ann was like, "Okay, well then fuck it. I just want you to speak to Susan because she can't just be hitting my kid." Now, it was this event that Ann believed led to the arrest of her son. So she was not taking anything seriously at first. And Robert was being arrested for the suspicion of abduction and murder of James Bulger. So it had nothing to fucking do with sagging class. Quote, John grabbed hold of his mother, crying and yelling, "I don't want to go to prison, Mom. I didn't kill the baby." When she was taken into the kitchen, the OSD team explained to her what was really going on. John immediately started snitching. "It's that Robert Thompson. He always gets me into trouble." "Are you going to speak to Robert Thompson?" "Why do you think we should?" He said, "Why do you think we should?" He said, "Yes." By Thursday morning, Bobby and John were fingerprinted and samples were taken. Quote, "If you touch someone's skin, does it leave a fingerprint?" This is what Bobby's asking. "If you drag someone really hard, do you leave nails in their skin?"
What?
The only evidence that they had at this time was circumstantial, so the subsequent hours were crucial. The interviewers were selected, and it was time to talk to the boys. They had to handle this very differently because the ages of the boys created issues, because they couldn't press them the way they would typically press an adult. The interviews were recorded in 45-minute increments, with each tape ending at the 45-minute mark. So they would talk, and then the thing would beep, and they would have to change the tape. 2 tapes were recorded simultaneously. One was for the police and the other was sealed and signed by the interviewing officer and the suspect's lawyer. So the detective, Sergeant Phil Roberts and Bob Jacobs of the Serious Crime Squad, was conducting the Thomas interview, and Venables would be interviewed by Mark Dale and George Scott. So Robert Thompson. Robert Thompson was born August 23rd, 1982 in Fazakerley Hospital in Liverpool to Anne and Robert Thompson Sr. Big Bobby was raised by his brothers after his father passed away, and Anne's childhood was ripe with abuse by her father. So when she married Big Bobby and he started to abuse her, this was really nothing new. The household was a shit show. Anne had 5 kids in 9 years, and all of them were fucking boys. Big Bobby would spend a lot of time at the local pub and would come home super fucking aggressive. He'd come in drunk with a takeaway and shout for Anne to fetch him a fork. When he'd finish, he'd say, "Now go and wash it." And she would go and wash it your bloody self. And he'd drag her through the kitchen by her hair, fill up the sink, push her head in a pail of water, and put her head in the water, and then she'd go to bed. He'd come, he'd beat her for going to sleep.
Excessive? It's a bit much?
A little much. So Big Bobby was an electrician. So life was stable after little Bobby was born. In 1988, when they would start like going camping and fishing in this area called Moston in North Wales, and they met this couple there. This is just a messy ass story. So they met this couple there, Barbara and Jack, and Barbara would buy the kids gifts and would even buy Big Bobby a gift, claiming that it was no big deal. I have more money than I know what to do with.
I know that's
so right. Barbara apparently had a reputation as a home wrecker, and Barbara was dancing with Big Bobby when Jack came into Anne's tent. "You better get round to these two. They pissed off together." So Anne was like, "Don't act silly." She never known Bobby to go off with anybody. So she was like, "Don't act silly." But Jack said she better do something. So Anne threw her coat on over her pajamas and her dressing gown and walked around by the club where Bobby and Barbara were caught kissing and cuddling as they came out the door. "Just leave her alone," Bobby tells Anne. This is what Bobby is telling his own wife. He's telling Anne to leave Barbara alone. Anne grabbed the sleeve of Barbara's dress and it just came off in her hands. Oh. So she flung it. And as Barbara was looking around for it, she grabbed the dress again and pulled the front away. So everything was showing. So Barbara's a bit of a hot ass whore. Mm. Jack appeared with a knife. "I'll bloody kill you. I'll bloody kill you." "Don't be stupid," says Anne. And she's like, "Go put your knife away." Anne basically is like, it's not the first time she's done it. You know that. Jack's like, "Yeah, I know. It's not the first time." He's like, the 5th family she split up. But she'll be back. This is what Jack is saying. What? So then 12 months. He was like, 12 months and she'll be back. I'm like, damn, nigga, a year?
Oh, that's not like 12 days or 12 hours.
So he got in his car and he drove home. And so Bobby and Barbara, they took a taxi and went off together. Anne was left with the 6 kids. And so here she is at the camping site with a tent, a van that she can't drive, assuming that he has the keys. And in the morning, as soon as it was light, Anne phoned Bobby's mother and asked for AI to come and fetch them. I don't know what AI is. I don't know if that's their taxi. I don't know. But her mom said, "Oh, our Robert wouldn't have buggered off with somebody. I'm telling you." And then Anne is like, "I'm telling you, he has." And at dinner, while she was still waiting for the taxi or her ride, Bobby turned up with Bobby and put her in front of the van and said, if you touch her, I'll fucking kill you. I'll just...
Wow. Okay.
He said, I'll just leave you all here. And he started collecting the shit. Like, he started picking up the shit. They all drove back together with Barbara in the car. And Anne, who had been up all night, she was like, I could literally put this fucking thing around this girl's neck. Like, she was in the car thinking, like, I could kill this bitch, which is telling me that Anne is sitting in the back seat and Barbara is sitting in the front seat. So I would also like to say that the book mentioned that Anne had gained a substantial amount of weight because she pissed out 5 of this motherfucker's kids. And it's possible that he was looking at other women because of that. And the reason why he was dancing with Barbara to begin with is because she was so heavy that she didn't feel comfortable dancing.
Aww.
And so, you know, so now Barbara, you know, who is clearly the little, you know, fuck it, you know, type of bitch, she is, you know, pissing around with this woman's husband. And Anne don't even seem to be pressed as Jack is. But Jack is fucked up about it. And Anne is like, you know who this bitch is. Come on now. Now, the last thing she saw was, I'm sorry. So hold on. So they're driving along, but she sacked that. Like, there was like this piece of lead and she grabbed the teapot instead and she lunged it towards Barbara's head.
Where did this happen?
This happens in the car, apparently.
There's a teapot?
Well, because, you know, British people they're always prepared for tea time. So they pack
like
tea
literally?
For camping. Yeah, literally.
Okay.
So the last thing she saw was all the blood. And then Bobby grabbed her and she woke up on the floor. And he drove off, leaving her with the kids again. So the kids were in a very right state by this time. Eventually, her ride arrived and they took them home. But Big Bobby stayed for around 7 weeks before leaving completely. Next time they saw him was at his mother's funeral. Anne was suffering from chronic depression and from paranoia. She also had a drinking problem. Her husband had left her with kids, thousands of pounds in bills, and she had to get on welfare. Because of the mixture of the drugs and alcohol, she would also have hallucinations. Quote, when she went home at night and got into bed, she'd see faces crowding around laughing at her. And it wasn't anyone she knew, just faces. She'd lie there sweating and unable to sleep. She decided she better stop taking the temazepam and the diazepam. So she did, and the faces went away. Now, that's how Bobby Thompson grew up. That's the chaos he grew up into. John Venables, who was born August 13th, 1982 at Mill Road Hospital in Everton. His parents, Neil and Susan Venables, had 3 children, an older son, Mark, and a younger daughter, Michelle. It was discovered later that Mark had a learning disability and would need to go to a special school. So Neil would eventually divorce Susan after losing his job and move in with his father. And Susan moved in with her mother until she was selected to live in public housing. So here we got another welfare mother who was left by her husband to take care of the kids. Susan was struggling with separation from Neil and was being treated for depression. And Neil was also suffering from depression because he lost his job and obviously he feels useless. So the two would co-parent still, but the frustration heightened with Mark's sudden temper tantrums because Mark was mentally disabled. The following year, they found out that Michelle was also mentally disabled and she suffered from learning disabilities. Now, they had 3 kids. John, who is the suspect in this crime, is the middle child. Mark is the older child. Michelle is the youngest child. So John is literally in between 2 mentally disabled kids. The learning disabilities thing was frustrating because they all needed to go to a special school. But John didn't really start acting strange until 1991, when he would just sit in his chair, rock back and forth, and make strange noises. John's behavior became more disruptive over time, and he claimed that he was bullied. He would become abusive towards his mother and the social worker, and the social worker believed that he was suffering from lack of attention because his two siblings required so much of it. Now, he was transferred to another school, which was the Walton St. Mary's Church of England Primary School, which is where he met Bobby. They gradually became friends, and John was fine in the classroom, but would act up on the playground. He would eventually start fighting his brother, Mark, and when John was too difficult, Susan would send him off to be with his father. So Susan looked after Mark and Michelle. So they think John's biggest issue is that he wasn't getting enough attention. John and Robert's friendship was a perfect fucking storm. Both were held back for learning challenges. Both were in disruptive households. They were both either bullied or bullied others. So when they started cutting school, it came as no surprise. They would start to really misbehave in school. And John was more of the type that would bang his head on a wall. And Robert was more of a silent killer. He was quiet and very manipulating. He was like manipulative. He was calculating. He never took the blame for anything. John was aggressive and would call all of the other kids names. He would call kids fat and stupid and all types of shit. But Bobby was the more dominant of the two. Teachers believed he was a cunning liar. John was also more streetwise of the two, even though he could be quiet and submissive to certain teachers. But most teachers thought that John was emotionally disturbed. They was like, there's something the fuck wrong with him. Now, on the day of the murder, John and Robert had walked 2 miles after leaving school to the Strand. They were both in their school uniforms. They were wearing black trousers, white shirt, gray V-neck jumper, blue and yellow striped tie. Both boys were wearing their brogues. Bobby was wearing his black jacket with the green trim and the blue patches. John's jacket was mustard color and plain and not long bought from Dunn's, which is a store. John had a bold head cut, a bowlead.
What?
Bowlead. It's a bowl cut.
Okay.
They say head
like,
with an
what?
apostrophe EAD, so no H. The H is silent.
Okay, unnecessary.
Ed.
We don't need that.
Bobby had a number 2 crop, straight through with the shears. John was 4'8", and Bobby was shorter by 2 inches. They made it to a few stores. Now, on the day of the crime, they were shoplifting all over the fucking place. Bobby stole a toy soldier from a drugstore, then off to TJ Hughes, where they tried to lure another child. They tried to lure Mrs. Power's son. John said, go back to your mom, because they got caught with the boy. So that was around 12:34 p.m. that day. They were just being a nuisance. They were popping in and out of stores. They were stealing shit. But then the stuff that they stole, they would just throw it in the garbage. They were just getting kicked out of stores left and right. And then they went and they stole some food and drink because John said that his mouth was dead upset, which basically means that he was thirsty. I think that's a nice little piece of slang we can use going forward. They made their way to Toy Master, where they stole. Now, this is where they got the paint. They made their way to Toy Masters, where they stole some tins of enamel paint in blue and bronze.
Like,
and they were
with the paint?
Because they were just stealing shit. And they were playing with them when one broke open. The one that broke open was the bronze, and they left it there on the ground by Tim's the butcher's place. That's when they saw a little boy in a blue coat outside of the butcher's. James was eating his Smarties. He had some candy, and it was John's idea to approach him. Come on, baby, is what he said. It's always so weird that they call him baby. James followed, and John took his hand as they walked back towards TJ Hughes. It took 1 minute and 31 seconds from the store to the entrance, and Bobby was walking in front of John. This was at 3:42 p.m. They were spotted by a cab driver carrying James in a bear hug, and when they put him down, James started to cry. Are you all right? You were told not to run, one of the boys said, loud enough for passersby to hear. He said, I want my mom. This is what James is saying. Multiple witnesses, 38 to be exact, spotted the boys walking around town. One woman came out of the post office and thought James looked confused and didn't understand why he was in the custody of two very young boys. The second woman saw James crying by the canal and looked over to see what was going on, but she just assumed that he was with the other children. A third passerby saw James and the boys and noticed a mark on his forehead. Now, quote, down by the canal, John and Bobby went under the bridge and sat James on the guardrail that separated the tow path from the water. They talked about pushing him into the canal. Then one of them picked James up and dropped him on the ground head first. His forehead was grazed and he began crying. At this point, they put a hood over his head to cover the wound. The fourth person, passing the AMEC building, which is where they got the second tape from, they were spotted by 3 young women. The fifth person, a driver, noticed them passing his van. Quote, as he glanced around, the driver caught sight of John and Bobby pulling at James's arms, as if trying to make him move. James looked red-faced and puffy, and the driver could see that he was crying. He watched as Bobby gave James a persuasive kick in the ribs.
You don't gotta do that. I don't feel like you have to kick anyone in the ribs.
No, not necessary. A woman driving with her husband saw them and thought that they were playing a game when she saw John chasing James towards Bobby. At this point, James began crying again. I want my mom. I want my mom. I want my mom. Another driver spotted them at the light when he thought James was going to walk into the road, but Bobby picked James up. They were spotted again by a motorist holding James. He could see James was crying and thought it was odd that there was no adult around. A woman also walking her dog spotted James on the steps. At this point, James was laughing. It was believed that shortly after, James was punched. A woman closing her curtains saw John grabbing James by the shoulders and shaking him. And then an elderly woman walking her dog saw James crying. She was like, "What's going on?" And we just found him at the bottom of the hill. She saw then that James had 2 bumps on his forehead and he had 2 bumps, one on his forehead and one on the top of his head. She said, "Do you know him?" And the boys were like, "No." And the woman told them that James's injuries needed attention, and they asked her the way to the police station, and she directed him to the station at Walton Lane. The neighbor who was peering out of her window wondered, and she was watching as the elderly woman gesticulated and guessed that the child was lost. So she was surprised when the boys seemed to walk off in the opposite direction to the way the woman had indicated, and thought that the woman must be uneasy when she turned back to the boys, apparently shouting after them. The elderly woman was indeed uneasy, though somewhat reassured when she saw and spoke to a friend who was also out strolling that afternoon. This was the woman who earlier had seen James laughing with John and Bobby on the steps. The woman told her elderly friend that James had been all right when she saw him, so she imagined that the boys must be all brothers. So during this trip, John and Bobby would tell the same lies. They found him in the reservoir. They needed to take him to the police station. They were fed up with their little brother, and he was frustrating them. There was even a witness that saw James get pushed into the street. And when the boys were arrested, the story was all over the fucking place. They each blamed each other. They claimed that the boys were, that they were boys with similar jackets. It couldn't have been them on the tapes. Bobby claimed he never took the boy. It was John. The cops needed admissions, which they may get, may not get, but what they were really waiting for was the forensics. So throughout the interview, Bobby would cry and cry. So here's Roberts. "We believe that you left with baby James and with John." Bobby says, "Who says?" Roberts says, "We say." Bobby says, "No, I never left with him." "Well, tell me what happened then." "It shows in the paper that John had hold of his hand. Why do I have to stay here?" "John's the one that took the baby." By Bobby's 4th tape, he would say, "Then we went to the Strand and we picked little James up." "Yeah." "And took him out of the Strand." "Yeah." "Well, John did." Roberts, "Right. Then we took him down and left him on the how." "On the how?" "By the railway." by the railway. All right. Now, you went past the reservoir. Yeah. Pardon? Did you go past the reservoir? Bobby said, yeah, we went past the reservoir. Yeah. Bobby was like, we did have paint. It was a little enamel, wasn't it? Jacobs, the other interview. Yeah, it was. John took it. Jacobs, where from? I think it was Toymaster. Jacobs said, when was that? Friday. Jacobs was like, no, but at what stage? Toymaster in the Strand, was it? Yeah. What color was it? I didn't know. It was a little silver tin with a white label on it. Jacobs, was it? Now, did he take that before you took baby James? Yeah. Where did he put it? In his pocket. Okay, now did he open it at that stage, or did he open it? When did he open the tin? When we were walking along the road. Which road? Bedford Road. Okay, now you still don't have to tell us anything unless you wish to do so. Anything that you say can be given in evidence. You understand that, don't you? We still want to know what happened with the paint, all right? Now, what happened with it? They keep re-saying that they understand because legally they need these kids to understand what they're saying and what the repercussions are of what they're saying. So it's kind of like in America where you get read the Miranda rights. They are basically repeatedly saying the Miranda rights every time they do a new bit of evidence because they need the kids to understand that this will be used against you later.
Yikes.
So Bobby says he threw it in baby James's eye. That eye, I think it was. Bobby points to his left eye. Where was that? On the railroad. So he basically admits that John threw the blue paint at James's eye and hit him in the face with it, which was a tin of blue paint. So John was more of the same. He was crying. He didn't want to answer any questions. It was actually kind of frustrating reading their interviews because they're fucking kids. So they cry. But John was like, I want to talk to my mom. I want to talk to me mom. He kept doing that shit. And both of their parents are actually in the room with them. So here's John's interview. Scott, well, if you never got the boy to tell us what happened, was it Robert? You're nodding your head. Scott had to keep telling him to stop nodding his head because obviously nodding your head is not anything that can be heard on a tape. So John was like, yeah, he left him in the road. And Scott says, right, well, let's go back into the Strand. Remember, the Strand is the mall. John says, no, I never touched the boy. Mom, I never. Susan says, okay. And Scott says, all right. And then John says, I haven't touched the boy. John becomes hysterical. He can't be consoled. And so Dale, who's the second interview, says, hold on, come on in here, son. All right, come on. And Susan says, oh, God, no. Dale says, settle yourself down. John, I never touched him. Dale, sit down. Go to your mom. John describes how Robert picked James up under his arms, lifted him up to about head or chest height because he was heavy, and slammed him down on the floor, and he landed on his head, which to me is just like, why did you have to? What is that about? It's like a wrestling move.
It's like wrestling.
So Susan, all right, you're going to get me crying now. John, I never, Mom. Susan, I know you wouldn't do that to that boy, would you? John, Robert's getting me in trouble. Scott, all right, well, you tell us what happened then. John says, we just went home and I left Robert on his own till he came back to Walton Village. Susan, tell me the truth now, John, please. John, I never killed him, Mom. Mom, we took him and I left him at the canal, Mom, that's all. And Scott, you left him at the canal by the Strand. John, yeah. So then John says, we took him to the railway and we started throwing bricks at him. Dale said, who did? John says, Robert. He said, just stand there and we'll get you a plaster or something. And Dale said, why did he throw bricks at him? John said, I don't know. And Dale, what else did he do apart from throwing bricks? John, he threw a big pole at him.
He did this to a baby. What is the reason?
Lee was like, what's that? Dale was like, threw a big pole at him. Is that what you said? John, that knocked him out. What was the pole made of? John said, steel. Dale said, like a bar? John said, yeah, off the track. Dale, where did the stones and bar hit him? John said, in the head. And you say the bar knocked him out. Yeah, on the railroad track. Dale, and then what happened? He was just lying there. So Robert says, well, you tell me. You tell Bobby. Bobby tells you everything that went on because I told you about 18 times, says Bobby. He doesn't know anything about James's clothing being removed because at this point they're asking, what was up with his clothes being removed? He said he doesn't know anything about asking James to look into the canal. People can whisper, he says. This doesn't make any sense. I'm trying to make it make sense. These fuckers are British as fuck. People can whisper, he says. John and Hughes whisper, everybody whispers. Why would he want to push James into the canal? Why would I want to kill him when I have my own baby? This is what John said. If I want to kill a baby, I'd kill my own, wouldn't I? And so then Jacobs asks, he says, yesterday, you said you have your own baby, didn't you? What do you mean? And then he's like, well, you said when we were talking to you, I know how me family, I'm not stupid. He said, I know he's me family. I'm not stupid. I don't even know what you're going on about. Sorry, this is Robert. So then Roberts says that when James was found, his bottom clothing had been removed. Can Bobby tell them why that is? No. Did Bobby start playing with him? With who? With James's bottom. No. Are you sure now? Yeah, I'm not a pervert. Bobby begins crying. Well, how would you like me calling you a pervert? He goes into the detention room and sees his mother. He talks to his mother now. He said I'm a pervert. And they said I played with his willy. So at this point, fucking Bobby is mad defensive because he's kind of like, fuck this dude for saying that I played with this little boy's pee-pee because I didn't.
He got offended. He's like, that's enough, okay?
Now, here's what happened. So the boys led James to the railway and attacked him. One of the boys threw blue Humbrol modeling paint into Bulger's left eye, and they kicked him and they hit him with bricks. Quote, Robert threw about 10 bricks. John threw about 6 or 5, but he deliberately missed James and hit him in the arm because John claims he never wanted to hurt him to begin with. They hit him with stones, and then they hit him with that 22-pound bar, which is a railway fish plate. The bar hit James on the head, and this is at what point John thinks that James officially passed out. They placed batteries in his mouth, which I got nothing. And then Bulger suffered 10 skull fractures as a result of the iron bar striking his head. Now, Alan Williams, who was the pathologist, he felt that Bulger suffered from so many fucking injuries that they could not isolate which one actually killed him.
Yeah, because they just beat this kid's ass for an hour.
For a minute. Like, and not even an hour, but just like they tortured him. Sorry. Oh, I didn't hit you. The police suspected that there was a sexual element because his underclothes and his trousers were removed, but Robert pulled James's pants off and his undies, and John pulled his shoes off. He doesn't really know why. This is what he said. He said, it was last week. That's what he said.
That's why he doesn't know why.
He said, I keep on forgetting. Robert threw the underpants behind him and then picked them up again and put them on James's face where there was blood. The pathologist report said that Bulger's foreskin had been manipulated. But then when they were questioned by, that the child psychologists and Thompson and Venables were very reluctant to give any details. Bobby said, quote, Bobby did not like looking at the blood. You could still see it pumping underneath the underpants every couple of seconds. So Bobby started putting bricks around the head so that the bricks could be put over the face. And he only tried to cover James's face so that he could not have to look at the blood anymore. So there was the child psychologist, her name was Eileen Vizard. She said, quote, Bobby is an articulate boy of reasonable intelligence who was spontaneous in his speech and communication, and he spoke rapidly at times, but was coherent and rational and understood all questions. At times, it almost seemed that he was of better than average intelligence, his responses being carefully gauged for his interviewers. Dr. Bailey, who assessed John, said he showed no evidence of hallucinatory or otherwise unusual experiences, and there was no indication of obsessive or compulsive phenomena. He had not presented with any clinical evidence of a depressive illness, though he had appropriate anxieties about the forthcoming trial. It was unfortunate, Dr. Bailey observed, that John had been advised to disguise his age and offenses at the secure unit, and this had hindered him in coming to terms with his situation. Dr. Bailey's behavioral analysis of John's problems was that there was no evidence of any organic factors in infancy which might have affected his development. He had been reared in a supportive family setting and in early childhood had been described as a happy boy who functioned normally in a playgroup setting. Between the ages of 4 and 7, he had functioned normally within the home and within education. The bullying was linked to remarks about John's eye defect because he had like not a lazy eye, but like a low lid situation. So his eye kind of looked closed, and his brother's special needs. So he was being bullied for those two things. Dr. Bailey had made a concluding point about the theme of the denial in her interviews with John, but there was no indication in the report of any disparity between the family's views of itself and other information that was then available. Dr. Bailey had concluded that John could distinguish between fantasy and reality, but had noted for her interviews with John that when he watched Kung Fu videos, he thought they were real and would cry. John's lie score was relatively high, though, and Marion Preston said that it was in keeping with the degree of defensiveness shown in other tests. He was continuing to deny any difficulties, notably to do with his family. And there was a high lie score in his test, too, consistent with faking good and relating to an idealized view of himself. So he was a liar. That was true. Okay. Now, Dale says that you haven't told your mom something today. And he was like, didn't someone kick James? And then John is like, oh yeah, me. What? He was like, only light. He's like, I punched him light on the reservoir. He's like, didn't you push him and didn't you kick him while you were up at the line? No, Robert did. Did he? Where? Underneath. Where's underneath? John points to his groin. What do you call it? Says Dale. Come on. It's not rude. Come on. Let's see what you call it. And then John says, a willy. Robert did that about 10 times. So he kicked this little boy's penis 10 times. Now, I'm saying kicked. He follows this statement up by saying his legs were going, which to me is a reflexive response to someone being kicked in the testicles or the penis. So you had a 2-year-old whose penis you basically stumped on 10 times, which tells me that that's probably how his foreskin peeled back. Why? Why did you step on this child's groin? We'll get to that in a minute because John has a little bit of a problem. Now, it was after James's trousers was taken off. So there was something else, wasn't there, says Dale. Oh, yeah, says John. I forgot. I told me mom last night everything, but it just came out me mine this morning. Dale says, so you kicked him as well. Where did you kick him? The chest and the middle there. And I punched him in his face a few times. Light. Did you kick him while he was lying down? No, Robert did. You know, he went like that. He stamped on him. Yeah, not in the face. I think it was in the legs or something. Dale says they took a pair of John's shoes and there were blood on them. So John said he forgot that bit because he kicked him in the face and all blood came on his shoes. So John asked if they took Robert's shoes, and they did. Robert kicked him in the face loads of times. So John only kicked him once or twice. And this happened halfway through when Robert was throwing bricks.
I just want to know what the reason for any of this was.
I got
you see
nothing.
a little boy wandering outside and you decide to like throw things,
kidnap him,
kick him.
Because originally, like they basically decided before that they were going to take a baby.
Oh, okay.
That was it.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So before they left him, the boys laid Bulger across the railroad tracks and weighted his head with rubble. Bobby says he struck him. He stuck one brick on him and it fell off his face. And then John put it on and then it rolled back off. And then Bobby was like nodding his head. Yes, he put the bricks back on. And then he was like, I haven't got a toothbrush in here. And Jacobs was like, we'll speak to someone about getting you a toothbrush. He's just like detached. So in the hope that a train would hit him, and make his death appear to be an accident, maybe. But after Bulger's, after they left the scene, his body was cut in half by the train. And his body was discovered 2 days later on February 14th. And a forensic pathologist testified that he had died before he was struck by the train, which is like, thank God.
Yeah.
Why had James's body been placed across the track? Bobby said, it's not up to me to think about why he put the baby on the track. This kid's a dick. Then he said, so it would get cut up. And what was the point of that? Bobby looked uncomfortable. He said repeatedly that he didn't know. And then some people might say it would give an excuse. So I guess Bobby's basically saying that he put him on the track because at the end of the day, all of the abuse and all the stuff that happened to him prior would just look like maybe it was caused by the train, which I feel like is incredibly methodical for 2 10-year-olds. Like, there was a couple of references to some movies that they like to watch, which unfortunately could have led, they said Child's Play 3. There were some uncanny similarities to Child's Play 3 and the murder. I didn't want to put that in here, honestly, because I hate the idea that people want to kill people because of movies.
It's bullshit.
Or video games,
it's
or
like
music.
You didn't know you were interested or had thoughts of murder until you watched Child's Play.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
And and it's weird too because there were some moments where it was like he just thought that what was happening in the movies were real. And I think that's, it goes back to parenting as usual. You talk to your kids about what the fuck that they're watching and let them know that it's all make believe and that things like this, shouldn't happen in real life. And so if he did mimic a scene in Child's Play 3, then I think that is still about how you raise your kids and what you allow them to watch. And these kids went to the video store a lot and they grabbed movies a lot. Their parents were parents had memberships and, they enjoy watching films. So if he had any idea of, if he got any bright ideas and they came from the movies, sure. But that doesn't change the fact that these kids were also just sick.
I was going to say, because honestly, we grew up watching a lot of horror films.
Yeah.
And I have not killed anyone.
Yeah, I have no interest
Granted,
in it.
I'm only 30.
What?
But
sure,
it could happen.
Sure.
I have not had the thought, though.
Yeah, I don't think about killing people. So now Bobby was asked what he was thinking when he left the railway line, and he said that he was thinking, what on earth did he do that for? He's an effing bastard. Mm-hmm. He thought John would get a beating for what he had done, but Bobby didn't think he would get in trouble because he didn't do anything. And so forensic tests also confirmed that both boys had the same blue paint on their clothing as found on Bulger's body, and both had blood on their shoes. Blood on Thompson's shoe was matched to Bulger through DNA tests, and the boys were charged with Bulger's murder on February 20th, 1993, and appeared at the South Sefton Youth Court on the 22nd of February, 1993, when they were remanded in custody to await trial. And after 9-month investigation, Thompson and Venables were found guilty of the murder of Bulger on the 24th of November, 1993, making them the youngest convicted murderers in modern English history. The judge sentenced them to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure with the recommendation that they should be kept in custody for very, very many years to come, recommending a minimum term of 8. Shortly after the trial, Lord Taylor of Gosford, the Lord Chief Justice, ordered that the two boys should serve a minimum of 10 years, which would have them eligible for release in February of 2003 at the age of 20. In 1999, lawyers from Thompson and Venables appealed to the European Court of Human Rights that the boys' trial had not been impartial since they were too young to follow the proceedings and understand an adult court. Now, that March in 1999, the court ruled by 14 votes to 5 that there had been a violation of the Article 6 of the European Convention of the Human Rights regarding the fairness of the trial of Thompson and Venables, because the public trial had kind of had some outcries because they felt like they were a little too young to have to endure such an intimidating process. They also felt that to try them as an adult and to force them to kind of like relive this experience was unfair. At the time, there was this whole like anybody under 14 kind of get a slap on the wrist thing. And in Britain, they have a very storied history of kids killing people. Like, you know, we have a mass shooting problem with kids killing people. They have a mass just murder problem with kids being murderers.
Yeah, clearly.
You know, in the UK especially, there are many cases of kids just randomly killing kids and adults. And I'm talking about with knives and shit and like brutally murdering them. So that was the issue here, was that they were thinking these kids are far too young to actually have to endure a process like this. And to me, especially when you read and you learn more about these kids, you're like, but they knew what the fuck that they were doing.
I was gonna say, I mean, it was not like it was thought out.
No.
You know, like they didn't sit and plan it. But I mean, for you to throw bricks at a child,
yeah,
and like
they stoned a kid,
yeah,
and then you know what's wild is you went to the mall with the intention of taking a child, even though you didn't know what you were going to do with it. But then you began to torture it, and it made sense to you. And then, you know, and now obviously to cover up the crime and all of this. But I think what made the biggest difference is the number of witnesses in between the mall and the canal that saw them, and then the people that really desperately, because there were 11 different instances where the people tried to intervene, where they tried to direct these kids to a police station or have somebody take the kid to the hospital, because at this point they had already dropped James on his head and he had a bump on his head. So there were multiple people who saw him bleeding and was like, he should go to the hospital. But then the boys were like, but he's our brother. And then there were moments where they were like, but he's not our brother. We don't know. We found him. And they were making it seem like they were finding. So then, you know, it was fucked up too, because you had these witnesses who had to deal with the grief of feeling like they didn't do enough because they thought that this kid, you know, that these were just kids that belonged together. This is his little brother. Like, you know, and you're talking about a poor town in Liverpool where you got motherfuckers, kids who are probably always taking care of their little brothers and sisters and shit, you know, and even though you had a couple adults who were like, I don't understand why these kids are, you know, taking care of this little boy. I mean, in the hood, we used to see it all the time. You know, two kids who got a little kid, and you just think that they all belong together. So these witnesses had to endure the uncomfortable part of having to show up in court and say that I was there and I could have stopped it, and I didn't do just like that one extra thing that possibly would have saved this boy's life. But to me, it's kind of like, it's fucked up. It happened. It was a perfect storm of events. I don't know. I mean, how would you really know? You can't really know. So anyway, after a 6-month review, this was in 2001, after a 6-month review, the parole board ruled that these kids were no longer a public threat and they could be released. They were also put on witness protection and they were given new identities. And some people were okay with this, and some people were really pissed about this because they spent a lot of taxpayer dollars to fabricate passports, to get them insurance numbers, to get them certificates and medical records, to basically act like these kids don't exist anymore.
Yeah, after they've already killed somebody.
They killed somebody, and and it sucks because they felt like they're getting out at too young of an age for them not to have new identities. Because if you don't give them a new identity, they won't be able to lead lives, because we're assuming that they're going to do something after getting out of jail. Now, it seems that only one of them ended up being worse, and that was actually John Venables. John Venables in 2005 was 23. He ended up fucking some security officer in jail. He got her fired. But then his probation officer met a girlfriend of his who was 17. And he ended up having like a bunch of younger girlfriends. Now, that was also possibly because he had a delayed adolescence. That happens, people who didn't really have a childhood, when they get older, they found themselves being attracted to children. But after a period of apparently reduced supervision, he became like excessively drinking, taking drugs. And then he really starts getting in trouble when he started downloading child abuse images. Mm-hmm. And he was visiting Merseyside again, which he was not supposed to do. And that was against his probation. He wasn't supposed to be visiting the town. He wasn't supposed to go back to the town. He had a new identity. Everything was new.
You know why he don't care? Because he got a new identity.
Yeah, exactly. So by March 2010, he goes back to prison for an unspecified violation.
Waste the fucking money.
But what ends up happening is he was charged with possession and distribution of indecent images of children, which was alleged that he downloaded 57 indecent images of children over a 12-month period in February of 2010, and had allowed other people to access the files as well on a peer-to-peer network. So he was facing 2 charges under the Protection of Children Act in 1978. And in July of 2010, he pled guilty to the charges of downloading and distributing child pornography and was given a sentence of 2 years. Now, what was crazy about that too is that he fucked up his new identity.
Yeah, but also 2 years?
Yeah.
After you've already fucked some shit up?
Yeah. I mean, he was given a new identity and moved to a secret location, and he breached his license yet again. So of course, what does he do? He tries to get another identity in 2011, and but they were like, it was a serious security breach, which revealed an identity that he had been using before his imprisonment in 2010. And so the Ministry of Justice says such a charge of identity is extremely rare and granted only when the police assess that there is a clear and credible evidence of a sustained threat to the offender's life on the release into the community. The incident occurred after a man from Exeter posted photographs of on a website devoted to identifying pedophiles, allegedly showing Venables as an adult and revealing his name. So that's how he got caught up. And of course, he tried to get a new identity. It's like, fuck you, dude.
That's why you should have locked him the fuck up when he was little.
Yeah. And so in 2011, Officials had decided that he should stay in prison for the foreseeable future, as he would likely reveal his true identity if released. And then the Ministry of Justice spokesperson declined to comment on the reports. But in July of 2013, it was reported they had approved his release again. And he was released from prison on September 3rd, 2013. But in 2017, it was reported that he had been recalled to prison for possession of child sexual abuse imagery.
He's a sicko.
Yeah.
Like, let's just hold on to him.
And so the Ministry of Justice again declined to comment on the reports. And in January of 2018, he was charged with unspecified offenses related to indecent images of children. And on February 7th, Venables pled guilty to the possession of indecent images of children for the second time. He pled guilty via video link of 3 charges of making indecent images of children and 1 possessing a pedophile manual that included advice for would-be child molested. Yeah, it was advice for would-be child molesters, including instructions on how to groom children and evade detection. He admitted to being in possession of 392 Category A, 148 Category B, 630 Category C child pornography images, and was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. Then in September 2020, he was denied parole. He was scheduled for another parole hearing in 2022, but was postponed for at least 3 months. For obvious reasons, it was probably COVID. Now, in March 2019, Bulger's father, Ralph, lost a legal challenge to lift the lifelong order protecting Venables' anonymity. Because at this point, he's kind of like, fuck, dude, he's a creep. People need to know he's a creep. So now, here you got the justice system in the UK that's basically allowing for a sexual pervert to have a secret identity. The whole point of even here in America, and I'm sure they have a registry in the UK as well, is for us to know when we're living and around predators. And if he has an identity that we don't know about, so it was a valid concern. So needless to say, he was fucked up, which I think the irony of this is Bobby Thompson was quote unquote the disturbed one who did the most damage, but kind of seemed to be the one that stayed low key.
Well, wasn't he the oldest?
They were both the same age. They were born 10 days apart.
Oh, okay.
But he's the one who was kind of on keeping a low profile. And when you see the pictures of these kids too, John Venables actually does look like he a little off. When I was watching the documentary was he was the one that looked the most disturbed. Bobby Thompson looked to be the one that was kind of normal, even though he was the one who did the most damage during the killing of James Bulger. John Venables was also the one that they just assumed had a sex problem. And because of that, they were
sex with children, probably.
Yeah. Even as a kid, there were a couple moments with John that they were like, yeah, there's something off. And I think they assumed that there may been some sexual assault in the household, which I believe is possible. But yeah. So that is the killing of James Bulger. Yeah, I know. It's not great. So I'm going to try desperately in the next 2 weeks to not do another child killing.
Thanks.
But this one was one that I saw and I thought was incredibly interesting, not just because, of how James Bulger was murdered, but the fact that James Bulger was murdered by 2 children was wild to me. And all of the events that led up to it and all the events that was after was just crazy. So I don't know where these assholes are now.
Hopefully jail.
Probably
jail.
And I mean, we can assume what Venables is, but I don't know where Bobby Thompson is. He keeping a low profile. He's like, yeah, fuck that. Leave me the fuck alone. I fucked up when I was 10. Leave me alone. But the rest of them are just, the parents, Denise, James's mom, she only went to court once. She was not there during any of it because they were showing a lot of the images, of course, of her son's mutilated body. Who would want to be there for that? She was just fucked up. She's on the documentary that I watched. It was called Lost Boy. I linked the YouTube video for both episodes in the show notes, so you'll be able to watch that on your own time. If this episode is incoherent, you can always watch it. I was trying to kind of summarize the way these people speak when I was doing it, because I was like, oh my God, I can't tell you how many times I had to reread the dialogue because I was like, I have no idea what the fuck this means. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Don't have kids. And
if you do have kids,
raise them.
Make sure they're not crazy.
Yeah, raise them to be upstanding citizens and not pieces of dog shit.
Or at least better than this.
And personally, if you're not an upstanding citizen, you're probably not going to raise upstanding children. So how about you do yourself a favor and practice birth control and
dickhead. Leave everybody
wear a
alone.
Condom. How about that?
Don't touch anyone.
So we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Hope you enjoyed yourself on episode 18 of Swear to Drunk. 2 more weeks off of social media, guys. I'll be back in August.
I'm literally on social media right now. Someone's making vegan cookies.
Okay. And then, yeah, I'll see you all. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Oh, also, we got 2 more episodes this season. I'm only doing 20 episodes in this season. So we got a month worth. And then after that, I'll be off in September and October, probably. And I may pick up in Nove, but I haven't decided yet.
Or in October at the end, just in time.
Well, I may pick up in October because technically that's when I started this show. I started the podcast October of last year. So I'll probably pick it back up in October and maybe I'll come back right before Halloween and we'll do something spooky.
Ooh, witches.
Yeah, let's do some witches. So, all right, we got 2 episodes left in this season. This is episode 18. I love y'all and I mean it. And now it's time for me to go get some sustenance.
I'm hungry.
Bye, bitches.
Goodbye.
Bye.